we're going. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, and we have a couple more people here today. Mr. Ron Caniff, otherwise known as Finn's Broadcaster, otherwise known as Unsquish the Fish, otherwise known as Jordy Todd. How many names have you gone through anyway, Ron?
I've gone through a few. We don't need to talk about it. I'm back to the normal name now. I'm done with all the name switching around. So sorry for the confusion, guys.
And the other guy that we have with us is Ian Berger, who is only known as Ian693 on Twitter. So good to have you here with us, Ian.
Good to see you guys. Good to hear you guys. Thanks for having me again tonight.
All right. Is that our own theme song?
Yeah, that's our intro.
All right, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. And when I say a lot, I do mean a lot. Free agent frenzy has begun, ladies and gentlemen, and the Miami Dolphins, once again, have decided to go ahead and make a lot of moves. As we already know, we have the moves made with trading Jarvis Landry to Cleveland for a couple of draft picks. We have moved on from Lawrence Timmons and Julius Thomas, those of which were expected. They actually re-signed Walt Aikens, a special teams ace, and somebody I actually enjoy very much on the team. He's a very good guy, and I like him a lot. And let's see, what else did they do? Oh, yeah, they they cut Ndamukong Suh, which I swore up and down last week would not happen because of dead cap. But okay, yeah, fine. That's fine.
Same here, Louis. Sorry. I looked like a real moron on that one too.
Like, no, dude, I don't think anybody was expecting it except Jason LaCanfora. That's a little weird. He's the only one who's right. But anyway, so what else did they do? Let's see. They cut Mike Pouncey. That's a big one. Nobody's really losing any sleep over it, but the fact that they did it at all is still a shocker. And they traded for Daniel Kilgore, formerly of the San Francisco 49ers, and he's going to take over Pouncey's spot unless somebody else beats him. I personally still think Jake Brendel could beat him one-on-one, but that's just me. So there's a lot of stuff happening. I forgot. I didn't even actually talk about the free agents they actually did sign. Let's see. Albert Wilson and Danny Amendola from New England are here to try and take over Jarvis Landry's place. And particularly Albert Wilson I like a lot because he has a lot of the same tools and he's faster than Jarvis Landry. As for Amendola, well, he's there to be the guy who's just a veteran leader and knows where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. Years in New England will do that to you. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I personally like what they're doing, but that's just me. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys and you tell me. And I'm going to start with you, Chad, because I know you and I have gone back and forth on what the Dolphins are doing and how they're approaching it. So let's go ahead and hear your thoughts on it.
Well, it's been a surprising offseason so far because of the drastic changes you're seeing going on. And I don't think it's easy right now to evaluate it because there's still a lot of moves to be made yet, I think, with the draft. I think the same as a lot of people, I was shocked that they cut Ndamukong Suh just because, one is I don't believe they have, not that I'm down on the 3D tackles we have that are the primary three, but I think it's a huge drop off from Ndamukong Suh to what we have. And so I was a little surprised they created the roster hole with it. And it also, I'm still not quite sure I completely comprehend what they're doing from a cap standpoint because they are going to be paying the guy $20 million over the next 2 years, or I should say they already have paid him that $20 million that's going to count on their cap over the next 2 years. So it's going to be hard to swallow, I think, for a couple years to see him playing for another team and him playing on the signing bonus Miami gave him. But beyond that, it's an interesting mix they're adding. Clearly, Adam Gase is trying to fix the problem they've had with execution. That's just the last 2 years. Even the prior year when we made the playoffs, we started really slow. And the team really, really struggles with the receivers knowing which routes to run, offensive linemen making mistakes with holding and jumping off sides. And I think Adam Gase has gotten very frustrated because I don't think he's really been able to, as a play caller, been able to run the offense that he wants to run. And so I think he just was fed up with it. So you saw him cleaning house with his assistant coaches, and you've seen him bringing in players that are very smart. And so, I mean, you just have to listen to the interviews for the linemen that he brought in and the receivers that he's brought in. And it's clear he's bringing somebody like Danny Amendola in to really help the receivers understand pre-snap reads and what routes to run. And so I think that's the emphasis right now, is getting smarter players that know what they're supposed to do over sheer talent. I mean, because you can't argue that Miami from where they were at the end of the season, they've removed a lot of the primary talented players on their team. Their Pro Bowl players have pretty much all been jettisoned. Landry's a player in his prime. Sue has played at a very high level. I do think it was time for Pouncey to go. I was okay with that, but it's going to be interesting to see, in a way, how this new philosophy plays out. But when you think about it, if you think at it from the macro level, Miami is not. They've made the playoffs once in about the last 10 or 15 years. It seems like it hasn't been a good run, and so something's got to change. And so it feels. I hate to say this because I don't like the ball club, but it feels very New England, where they're adding players that aren't players that everybody's attracted to, like big names. They're adding very specific players for specific roles, and New England seems to win with it continuously. So hopefully it's the right direction.
And how about you, Ron? Ian's been on the show already, and you've kind of been like on and off. So let's get you in here.
At first, I have to say I wasn't sure what the strategy was going to be for Miami going into the off season. I really thought they were going to just cut everything that they could on cap because they were just so cap strapped. And I'm like, the normal Miami is just going to free up as much cap as they can, regardless of the player. But they're not going to cut a bunch of players that are going to hurt their cap. So that meant that guys like Sue would be safe and yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden it was clear they had a different strategy as they wanted to really try to improve the culture of the team. And I know we've heard this before, where they're going to improve the culture and every new coach walks into every team and says, we need to improve the culture. So what they'll do to do that is they'll go in and they'll cut guys like, well, for instance, Dallas Thomas. Some guys that stink anyway, that really aren't taking up a lot of cap space, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll call that in the name of culture. Well, I give Gase credit, whether this is going to equate to wins or not. He's going in and cutting guys no matter how talented they are, no matter how much dead money they're going to pay him, $22 million to Sue or whatever the number is. How many coaches go in and cut Ajayi, Landry, well, they didn't cut Landry, traded him, and Sue in the name of changing the culture of the team? I can't think of a time that a team went in and did that. Those are like maybe some of the most talented guys we had on our team, especially in Landry and Sue. So I think everything for the theme from now on, you have to think about the culture. Don't expect it. I mean, what I've been tweeting out is in the draft, if you have your eye on a certain guy, a certain tight end, a certain anything, and there's something questionable in his background, he was getting into trouble in school, et cetera, guys with questionable backgrounds need not apply this year to Miami. They're not going to draft any of those guys. They're not going to bring those guys into the locker room. I think that's part of why we're hearing about DeMarco Murray so much. You hear about how he's such a leader in the locker room, how he really trying to change that running back room for Tennessee and did a lot of great things in their locker room. So I think really first and foremost, that's going to be their focus. And then secondly, what Chad was saying, bringing in guys to fit certain roles on their team. But they were going to find ways to cut cap and make space, and it wasn't going to be just about talent. So I think it's a little bit different strategy, and I'm willing to kind of sit back and see how it goes.
And you, Ian?
Well, Chad started off by stating that you can't really evaluate, what the leadership of the Miami Dolphins have done to date so far in free agency, and I actually think you can. I think the leadership team, Mike Tannenbaum, Adam Gase, everyone there in the office has basically made a statement and said, we are not going to let the status quo dictate how we manage our football team and how we put our football team together. And I think that's why you see all of the changes that have recently happened. Jarvis Landry, I think we all have agreed, or many of us have agreed, that you don't pay a slot receiver almost $16 million. So the fact that the Dolphins received some draft picks back in return, I think, was a positive. Secondly, you look at Mike Pouncey. They really have had to almost, I hate to use the word baby him, but they've had to baby him over the last season. I mean, if you look at the last time Mike Pouncey played in a 16-game season besides last year, it was 2012. And there was a lot of news out there that said that, he may not actually be able to return based on the severity of his hip injury. So, the fact that they let him go, it was a little bit surprising. But you know what? It's not that bad of a move. And Ndamukong Suh, I'm going to take you back to the way I was feeling when he got signed. I thought it was the greatest thing that our team, that our franchise had done. But going into it now, 3 years after, spending, what was it, $20 million almost per season for Ndamukong Suh, I don't think any player that is not a quarterback should be receiving $20 million per year. And I'll tell you, that was not the way I was thinking when he first got signed. When he first got signed, I thought it was great. He was going to be a game changer. Our defense was going to be stellar. But you know what? In 2017, last year, we gave up almost 1,800 rushing yards. The year before that, we gave up 2,200 rushing yards. And the first year that Ndamukong Suh was with the Dolphins, we gave up a little over 2,000 rushing yards. And I know, it's not all on him, right? But when you're paying that guy some kind of money, you're expecting that there is going to be some leadership that comes around with that. Then you look at some of the other players that we recently lost. Julius Thomas, 41 receptions for 388 yards. That was a no-brainer. Did a little math. He made $183,000 for each catch. If they want me to go out there and they want me to go out there and make some money, I'll go out there and make a catch for $183,000. And then Loris Timmons. I mean, his the writing was on the wall after his first game. So I think the Dolphins front office have done a spectacular job so far. There's a lot of people that say that we're going in the wrong direction, but this is the first year that I can remember where we haven't gone absolutely insane in the off season. We haven't used the term, we've won the off season. And I think that says something about our organization. I think somebody has finally come to the realization that you don't have to spend all this top dollar for free agent signings, and you build through the draft and you build from the young players that you have and you develop them. So I'm excited about what's happening. I can't wait to see what we got coming up in the draft in a couple weeks.
And before I let anybody else talk, I happen to notice that we actually have a caller today. This is the first caller in a long time, so I'm happy to hear it. What's on, guy? What's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going, man?
So who is this?
So this is Travis. I'm on Twitter, Turbay_Travis.
All right.
Big Miami Dolphin fan. Big fan of all your stuff, man.
Well, I really appreciate that. So what do you got on your mind?
So I'm sitting here tonight, and what's really on my mind at the moment is, do we have any news on the whole DeMarco Murray situation? Because I heard he was going to visit tonight.
Well, we haven't gotten any news on DeMarco Murray right now. What I will tell you is that personally, after watching some of his games last night, you watching the All-22 and that stuff, I would not be completely opposed. However, it would have to be at a price that is pretty darn cheap for somebody of DeMarco Murray's quote-unquote reputation. That's the problem with a lot of big-name players, is that these guys expect to be paid because they are X-player. They are DeMarco Murray. They are Ndamukong Suh. They are Jarvis Landry. You have to pay these guys big money because who they were in the past. So if Murray comes at a decent price, then I would be okay with bringing him on, because he does still have some versatility. He's a good pass catcher. He's smooth when he runs. He's not very fast. He's not very explosive anymore. That is the main issue that I have with Murray at this point. I didn't get a chance to really watch him do any pass blocking because I was more worried about what he would bring as a running back or as a receiver. So I would have to check and see, but I'm told that he's a very good pass blocker, and that's something that we could use. So again, if it's me, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it needs to be at a pretty darn bargain basement price, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. I really actually completely agree with you. I think that if the price is right, that's one thing. If it's not right, then I would pass on it. I definitely think that his, leadership and veteranship might be able to help Drake along the way. I know that he, from what I heard, I didn't watch many Cowboy games or Titan games, but from what I hear, he could catch pretty well out of the backfield. We all know that Gase loves that. But like you said, it's all about the price. I have one other thing I was going to mention, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
One other question for you, which was if we go linebacker in round one, if we do, who personally would you rather have between Smith or Edmonds?
Edmonds, but I'll go ahead and ask one of my other panelists. Anybody want to take this one?
I can if you want, Louis.
Sure.
Just to touch real quickly on your question, one other thing of interest that happened today was Cameron Wake had his contract, or at least $3 million, I should say, of his contract guaranteed, which allows Miami to spread that out a little bit. So that may be an indication they're creating a little bit of cap flexibility to sign DeMarco Murray. I don't know that, but I don't believe they're in a huge rush to sign him. I do believe, regardless, if Miami signs DeMarco Murray, their intent is to still draft a young running back. I do believe that's their intent. So we'll see how that unfolds. To your question, I think there's something. I think Miami's going to be running a little bit different style of defense this year, and the reason I believe that is I'm trying to make sense out of the Robert Quinn move. I mean, they're bringing in an elite pass rusher, and obviously after today, their intent is to keep Cam Wake as well. And it's a very odd move to draft Charles Harris as your number one draft pick last year, and to also give Andre Branch about $11 million this year. To have those guys just basically sit on the bench and just be rotational players, that play maybe 20, 30%, because they're also going to be working in Hayes as well as a run stopper. And so I'm kind of suspecting that they're going to be running some defensive formations that are going to have at least 3 of those guys on the field. And I'm kind of wondering if that might indicate that they're going to use Charles Harris a little bit as a strong side linebacker type role in the defense. And the reason I'm bringing that all up is if you're going to do that, I don't see them going with Edmonds, even though Edmonds he's young and he's physically very gifted. I have a feeling that they're looking more on the weak side with somebody like with Smith. And another reason for that is it was pretty apparent last year that Kiko Alonso is best suited defending the run, playing in the middle of the field, going sideline to sideline. He doesn't do very well matching up man-to-man with tight ends. Yeah, and several teams last year exploited Kiko Alonso with their tight ends in coverage. And so I
agreed. And isn't McMillan like a natural middle linebacker as well?
McMillan is supposed to be a middle linebacker, but he can play both. That's what we're told.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I don't think you're going to see specific, like they're only going to be playing these roles. Obviously, Charles Harris can put his hand in the ground and rush the passer. And if we have 3rd and long, I think you're going to see Harris, Quinn, and Wake all rushing the passer in some form when it's over 3rd and 5. But
God, that sounds like fun.
That is right? It's going to be fun. But I suspect they have a plan with Robert Quinn because it just doesn't make sense to keep those guys on the bench, and that's why I'm not promoting that Edmonds is a phenomenal athlete, and I'd be completely fine with them grabbing him as well. I feel like they're going to look more at Smith than Edmonds if they're going linebacker. I don't think they are going linebacker, to be honest, but if they are going linebacker with the 11th overall pick, I believe it's Smith over Edmonds.
All right. Thanks, Travis, for calling in. We really appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me.
Hey, Lewis, I wanted to throw out a question real quick.
Oh, okay.
Have a good night, guys.
What do we think?
Have a good night.
Sorry. What do we think the price is for DeMarco Murray? What's the right price? Where's everybody feel comfortable?
I don't know. I feel like maybe 3 or 4 million tops and I know that's going to be way too cheap for somebody like DeMarco Murray. I mean, the Titans just cut him and he was going to be making 6 something. So I
don't think so. I mean, I know he's got a huge name, but I think that 3 to 4 million is a much more. I don't think Miami's going to pay him a lot, DeMarco Murray, because he isn't a featured back anymore. You can tell that from his time with the Titans. He's not going to be somebody coming in here to get 15 carries in a game. He's here to help Kenyon Drake. He's here because he's a locker room leader, and he's also a proficient blocker. And so he's somebody that you could absolutely replace maybe a Damian Williams with in the offense. But I don't see Miami coming him in to be like the 1B running back, if you will. I still think they're going to draft that guy. And so that being the case, I don't think you can pay DeMarco Murray, $6-7 million a year for that role.
The Titans just cut him for making $6 million, so there's no way he's going to go anywhere and expect that much again, unless somebody gives it to him. I don't know.
So like a 2-year, $8 million deal. I mean, that maybe be the top of what you could be comfortable with.
And the thing we have to consider is that it's even if we don't bring in Murray, we're going to have to bring in somebody because right now the only two guys that are on the roster is Kenyon Drake and Sonoris Perry. That's it. We don't even have De'Veon Smith anymore because they didn't tender him. So we have to bring in at least two more running backs. And I don't think they're going to go and draft two guys.
I mean, but that's also this is something I was saying earlier on Twitter. That's a position where you could easily draft a guy mid rounds, and you can bring in at least two undrafted running backs, maybe more, but probably two. And a lot of good running backs come in that are either low round or undrafted. If any position you get like surprise play from, it's that position. The issue is you don't get experience, you don't get leadership necessarily. And I think that also is going to play into what they're trying to do, even though I'd rather see them not spend the money. I think I have this feeling that DeMarco Murray is going to be a Dolphin just based on everything they're looking to try and do.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, Ron. And I think that the message, though, is they're not necessarily, like I said, bringing him in to give him a pile of carries. They're bringing him in to help younger players. And Kenyon Drake's still a very young player, and that's why I suspect they're looking at drafting the running. I mean, this draft is, wow, when you get into the third or fourth round, I think there's going to be some real value at running back, not just the top guys, but just somebody like Sony Michael or,
Sony Michel, yeah.
Or Michelle, I'm sorry, sorry, Michelle, the Georgia running back. Me and my pronunciations are horrible, but I
might be the one wrong. I don't know.
No, I could be too easily. But I'm just saying he has a skill set where I don't think he's projecting as a first-round pick. He's probably going to be somewhere between the second and fourth. And it's a very capable young running back that Miami can come in to complement Drake very well. And there's a whole list of those guys. And like I said, I don't believe that's DeMarco Murray's role is to come in and be the number two guy. I think he's probably going to be a third down back sort of guy that you can utilize with his blocking skills and his receiving skills. And again, the theme here are guys that they can put in the game when they have them certain play sets practiced in practice that know what to do, know who to block and know where to go on a route and that sort of stuff. And you don't have to watch a lot of film last year watching linemen slide over to block the same guy and let somebody run in free and all the mistakes that were being made. DeMarco Murray is another extension of a guy that he's coming in because he's a pro and he's going to be prepared for the game. So I agree with Ron. I think he's going to be signed. I don't think Miami's in any hurry to give him a big contract. I think $8 million over 2 years would be realistic, probably with the second year non-guaranteed. So if he doesn't really work out this year, they can move on from him next year without much of a cap consequence. I think that would be a very realistic contract.
And I think Travis called back in. Is that you?
No, my name's Taylor.
Oh, okay, because I saw the same number twice, and I'm like, wait, what? Okay, so anyway, what's going on, Taylor? What can we help you with?
I don't want to change the focus too much. I know you guys are talking about running backs and DeMarco Murray coming in, but with the signing of Wilson and Amendola this offseason, do you think the Dolphins are still going to draft a wide receiver?
Ian, okay, right, hang on, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, right now, it seems like the wide receiver room is really full. We still got Carew on the roster, Grant, of course, which people are a lot of excited for. Isaiah Ford was on the IR all last year, so we don't know what he can bring to the table. So I don't know what do you guys think the wide receivers are going to look like?
All right, Ian, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, and Taylor, thanks for calling in, man. Much appreciated. So I do think that the Dolphins will probably take a wide receiver, probably mid to late rounds. It seems like it's a trend for the Dolphins that they always pick a new kid up to see how they rank and how they play and how they train. And obviously, if they don't make the team, obviously they've got them on the field for the preseason, and then of course they can select them to be on the practice squad afterwards to see if they develop. But I don't think it's going to be a top priority because, as you mentioned already, Taylor, that wide receiver room is really full. You look at Devontae Parker already, right? Kenny Stills. Now you got Albert Wilson and Danny Amendola, and the other two that you mentioned as well. So I think they're, if they do pull any, it's strictly going to be a developmental type of position. And it's going to be to see how they produce in preseason, to see how they produce in practices, and then to see, if they stick around for the practice squad.
All right. Do you guys think there's anybody on the practice squad from last season, like Drew Morgan or Isaiah Ford even, that could potentially make the roster this year?
Drew Morgan. I love that kid. Love that kid last season. I watched him throughout all preseason. I was there for the training camp, and was watching this kid make some plays, but for whatever the reason was, he could never transition his practice to game day, and that was disappointing because I was really rooting for the kid. He was young, he was hungry, he was quick, just didn't seem to be catching the ball. But you know what? Year over year, everybody learns, and that's sorry guys, I know I jumped in. So what else? What do you guys think?
I can answer a little bit. I think it's highly unlikely any of those guys are going to make the active roster. I think a guy like Isaiah Ford could easily be on the practice squad again. We'll have to see how he performs in preseason, but the team isn't going to carry. 6 would be the absolute maximum they're going to carry, and I'm almost positive Jakeem Grant is going to make the team with his special teams ability and where.
Yeah, there's no way Grant's not. There's no way Grant's not making it. No way.
And so you have to consider Jakeem Grant has already got in the fifth wide receiver spot locked down. And so the only way I would change my mindset if I thought any of the other receivers had much of a chance to making the active roster would be if they somehow trade Devontae Parker. And he's the only X-Man right now where he's a number 1 draft pick. He's got a boatload of talent, but it's not quite clear where the Dolphins are going with him because he's got a year left where you could trade him to maybe a team that really needs a wide receiver. And it isn't really a great wide receiver draft. There isn't wide receivers that are standing out. I mean, you have maybe a Calvin Ridley, but Devontae Parker has value if Miami just tries to move him around in the draft. And if that were to happen, then I could see maybe an Isaiah Ford or a Drew Morgan making the active roster as an outside guy. But again, I can't imagine it's going to be more than 6 guys max that are going to make the team, and that's going to be an extremely competitive 6th spot. And I would suspect, depending on the depth at the other positions, they may just try to carry 5 actives and then slip one of those guys or even 2 of them in on the practice squad and just hope that nobody grabs them.
If you don't mind me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said it sounds like a good plan, and then I was going to ask another question, but.
Okay, well, you can get one more. One more question, man. Go ahead.
So now we've got running backs covered, wide receivers covered. Did the Dolphins draft a tight end early?
They better. How about that?
Yeah.
God,
okay,
please.
Go ahead, Ron.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just take both those quickly.
Yeah, sorry I cut you off, but
no, you're fine. The wide receiver thing. Normally we'll go into camp with 12 wide receivers. That's when we have a full roster of 90 people. We have 11 wide receivers right now, and I think we might have had 7 or 8 at this point last year right after free agency, well before the draft. So we're not going to add much at all. We might add 1 guy, so that should be interesting. But I think an X factor we're not considering is why does everybody feel so sure that Carew is on this team when we go to 53? I'm not. I mean, the guy's shown nothing. You're talking about a guy in year 2 that's inactive on game days. I mean, for what we gave up in a draft to get this guy, I kind of feel like when you look at guys like Isaiah Ford, Drew Morgan, Rashawn Scott, I mean, if those guys outplay Carew, I mean, I could see them outplaying Carew. In my mind, some of those guys just on the eye test kind of look better to me than Carew. So I think there's a good shot that could happen, but maybe they have plans for Carew this year that are just different than we know about. And on the tight end thing, the problem with tight end is it takes so long for these guys to develop, and we keep not drafting tight ends, or we're not drafting them high. And we're just trying to fill with guys like Julius Thomas and I don't even remember who it was from Cleveland the year before. The guy we grabbed. Yeah. Jordan Cameron. We just keep trying to fill with guys like that, and we're not signing like the top tight end free agent if there's one to be signed. But we're not drafting a guy high because it takes 2 or 3 years to get that position ready. Even a good tight end doesn't really do great. I mean, you got to be Gronkowski to have a good rookie season as a tight end. That's like one of the toughest positions to to break out in a rookie season. It really is. So I think if they don't draft a tight end high, we're going to always be struggling with this unless we just get super lucky on a low drafted guy or an undrafted free agent. And that's not a position that normally happens with.
I agree with you, Ron, completely on the tight end.
All right. Thanks, Taylor, for calling in. We really appreciate it, man. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Taylor.
All right, so that was Taylor, and thanks again for calling. And so, actually, I'm actually kind of excited. There's a couple of callers already in 1 week. That's awesome. Excuse me for a moment for being hyped.
Hype away,
Lewis. A lot
Lewis.
of great things
Hype
going
away.
on, man.
All right, so I know that Duke's trying to get in here. Hopefully, he can come in here because he was in the group message on Twitter saying, "Hey, what's the number?" It's like, so we'll see if he hops in here. And so anyway, let's go ahead and keep going on the free agency discussion. So obviously, Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson, we briefly talked about the wide receivers. Now, the next question that really is on everybody's lips is, are we viewing this whole shebang as a rebuild or not? Because I've gotten into arguments with a lot of guys already who are saying that this is a rebuild and the Dolphins are getting rid of all their Pro Bowl players. And like, I'm trying to be polite about it, but in all honesty, we all know in the back of our minds that Pro Bowl really means nothing nowadays. It doesn't mean anything. It's a popularity contest. There was a couple back in 2014. Ryan Tannehill should have gone to the Pro Bowl, and they picked Andy Dalton instead because he's just more popular. He's the Red Rocket. Tannehill doesn't have a nickname besides RT17, which doesn't really do much. So I personally feel like that Mike Pouncey, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler, but his hips were fried, and everybody knows this. So I don't know why they so upset about this. And Ndamukong Suh, yes, I'm not going to even argue that the talent is still the same with Suh gone. That's not even a question. Obviously, defensive tackle needs some investment now, but the defense really wasn't that much better when Suh showed up. I mean, on paper it was, but it really didn't improve much. It kind of felt like a lateral move because even before Suh was around, it still felt like the defense was doing pretty much the same things they were before. So that's just my thoughts on it. As for Landry, this is where it becomes tricky because Albert Wilson, again, he has pretty much all the same tools as Landry. He has the same ability to break tackles. He in a lot less games and catches, I might add, he managed to break 15 tackles. Landry broke 17, and he had almost 3 times the number of catches last year. So what does that say about Albert Wilson? This guy's built like a little truck. So, and Amendola obviously is the guy who's the leader. He's going to know where he's going to be when he needs to be there. So I feel like we're not going. This is what the question was. And Chad, you were asking me about it because Jarvis Landry is proven and all that stuff. It's like, well, we see Albert Wilson doing it on the field, and he did a lot with Kansas City, even though he wasn't the main target all the time, which honestly, if we're being honest with ourselves, if Landry had not been the main target in Miami, I think his numbers would have been a lot like Albert Wilson's are now. So I feel like that we're really not going to miss Landry that much. So I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I think you haven't replaced Landry with those guys, with what Landry can do on the field. They're just completely different players. I think what's changing is they're not going to feed any specific person anymore. I think you're looking at Adam Gase wanting to be more diversified in his offense and spread the ball around a little bit more. And that's exactly what we're doing. And clearly he has an emphasis again on IQ and being able to read defenses pre-snap, and he obviously had an emphasis on speed. And just as we were mentioning how fun it's going to be to see Charles Harris and Robert Quinn and Cameron Wake all rushing the passer from somewhere or another, I'm kind of excited to see them throw Kenny Stills out there with Albert Wilson and maybe throw in Jakeem Grant and even Devontae Parker. And you've got several guys that are difficult to match up one-on-one from a speed standpoint. If you can get them all on the field and spread out, you can really take advantage of somebody that has a little bit slow, in their defensive backfield. So I think it's just a complete change in direction. I don't see Albert Wilson as somebody you're going to throw a screen pass to and watch him truck a linebacker and keep going like you would see somebody like Landry do. But I also think he's much more likely to, if you get him out in space, they literally take one to the house. He's that fast. So it's just a different way they're looking at doing it. And again, don't discount Amendola. Again, I really think Adam Gase wants people understanding how to read what the defense is doing and where to go. And all of us have just sit there in agony and watch the Patriots just do 5-yard slants, 5-yard out, 5-yard slant, and it's just the receiver and Brady pre-snap reading where to go, and at times it just feels like you can't stop it. And so that's I really think that's what Gase is trying to get to, is that sort of offense now that's a lot of pre-snap based, and that's what these players. Andy Reid is another very, very good coach at training receivers on pre-snap reads, and so it should be an upgrade, honestly, overall with what Landry was doing in terms of points, because you can't argue as good as Landry was. Our offense just wasn't scoring points, and it really makes, in my mind, it makes the defense hard to evaluate, because you think about how often our receivers our offense was going 3 and out, and how infrequently we were playing with the lead, and it's so much harder to play defense when the offense has their whole playbook and they can just pound the rock because they're up by 3 points. You need your offense to give your defense a little bit of a lead, and with Landry making all those catches and making some really big plays, it didn't change the fundamental problem. We just were not a high-scoring offense, and I think that's what Adam Gase is just. He's starting over. He's just like, I'm bringing in guys that I know can run my offense, even if they're not the most talented guys. I'm picking guys that at least know what they're doing.
How about you, Ian? Are we going to miss Jarvis Landry, considering Wilson and Amendola?
I think we're going to miss him a little bit. I think we're going to miss some of that passion, on the field when things are happening and things are getting more exciting, and Jarvis kind of takes that lead, takes the emotion, and really adds that emotion to the offense. But besides that, I don't think we're going to see a huge drop off in production from a wide receiver perspective. Not to say that Albert Wilson's going to jump right in, or Danny Amendola is going to jump right in and catch as many catches that Juice was catching before. But I think that it's going to be spread out a little bit more. And I think similar to what Chad was just mentioning, I think Jarvis's numbers were a reflection of the system that we had running the last couple of years. A lot of that underneath stuff, a lot of 7-8 yards, right in the middle, because either we didn't have an outside receiver that could go up and get the ball, which I think right now there's still some questions around that, or we didn't have a quarterback that could throw it that far. Right, last year, let's be honest, anything more than 20 yards was like seeing a unicorn. Right, so. I think it was really just a result of the system that he was in. So, am I sad to see him go? A little bit. I think we had a podcast about 2 or 3 months ago where I said I thought it was going to happen. I thought he was going to go. You don't pay a slot receiver $16 million, but I think Cleveland Browns. Well, they are the Cleveland Browns. But we'll see what happens. Again, I do not think this is a rebuild year. To mention what you were asking, Lewis. I think that the Dolphins are being smart with their money. I think they are getting components and individuals that they can plug in and that can make an immediate difference. And like Chad said, they're not star players. They're not people that are going to go to the Pro Bowl every year, but they're going to be contributors throughout the season. And, let's be honest, there's a lot of young guys that have been drafted over the last 2 years, that we're going to be able to see them making more contributions this year and next year and going forward. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting. And that's not something that we've seen very often with the Miami Dolphins. I could name like 6 or 7 guys that are in their second year or that are going to be going into their third year that really have the opportunity to take it to that next level. And that's what the coaches are getting paid to do, is to coach those guys to be productive, to be starters on that line. So Raekwon McMillan should be healthy. It should be. I think. I do not think we're in a rebuild year. I think we are in a year where they are expecting us to get into the playoffs, and to be honest with you, I think the fans are expecting it as well.
Who's doing the typing? Is that you, Ron?
No, I'm not typing. I'm just sitting.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in here real quick. This is the thing that I'm thinking about, and no, I don't think this is like I've said, I don't think this is a rebuild at all. And there are some people in the chat right now that are agreeing with me on that front. I do see you guys, chat. I do see you guys because I'm trying my best to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk here. It's Corey McKee who says that changing culture, even if it's a BS excuse, I'm just going with it. Okay, this is the thing that I'm thinking about, and it's kind of dawning on me what this whole culture change thing is. All right, here's what I'm thinking. Now, it could be completely off base. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is my theory based on what it is we're talking about when we're talking about changing culture. When we're saying changing culture, we're not necessarily saying that these players are problem players or even problem people in and of themselves. If somebody wants to be crazy on the football field, that's fine. I don't think that's what Gase is having an issue with. If somebody wants to be now the issue that I think is going on here is that are you more about yourself? Or are you more about the team? Now, everybody hates when I make these comparisons because, God forbid, I say that the Dolphins are anything like the Patriots in any way, and we have no business even being in the same sentence as them. That's what everybody tells me all the time. Don't compare us to the Patriots. We're nowhere close. But what if we're trying to get there? Never mind the wins right now. Half of the reason the Patriots win all the time is because these guys believe in team. And if you don't believe in team, then you're out. That's how Belichick has operated for years. And I think you guys would agree with me on that. Belichick has always been, if you are thinking more about yourself than you are about the good of the New England Patriot way, you're out. And that's what he's done with a lot of players. If you want more money than we're willing to offer you, you're out. If you think that you're bigger than the team, you're out. We don't care. We'll bench you. Chad Johnson came into New England and did absolutely nothing. He couldn't, quote unquote, grasp the playbook. And guess what? A superstar wide receiver was out because he didn't fit. That's the culture that I think we're trying to talk about here. Are you more into the team or are you more into yourself? And I think what happened was, and whether you can guess the ethics about this all day long. I will go ahead and tell you that maybe you have a point there. But I think what happened is that this offseason, we went to these players and asked them, are you willing to take less to stay in Miami? How much do you love being a Miami Dolphin? Do you love it enough to take a discount? Do you love it enough that you're willing to try and make this team a winner? Or do you want to go and cash in? If you want to go cash in, there's the door. We'll let you go cash in somewhere else. If you want to stay, here's the offer. And if you want it, then we'll take it. That's what happened, I think, with Jarvis Landry, because now there's a bunch of reports out that, the Dolphins were lying or, Landry was lying. Landry, the report wanted upwards of $16 million a year. That's crazy. Why would he want that much? Does he really think he's that special? Does he really think that he is his buddy OBJ? Does he really think that he's Antonio Brown? Does he really think all of these things? I don't know if he does or not. Okay, I see Duke calling in. I'm going to get him in here, and I'm going to go ahead and keep talking. So anyway, this is the thing that I'm saying is that the Miami Dolphins culture that they are trying to build is not based on whether you have a strong personality or not. It's about who is more important to you in your own mind. Is it the Dolphins team and their success or your success? Remember, Chad, you and I talked to Brandon Howard a few weeks back, and he told us that Jay Ajayi, there were times where he was supposed to get off the field and he waved off his replacement. He said, no, I'm not getting off the field. You're crazy. That is a scream for individual success. That is a scream for, I want to be the guy and I'm not going to let anybody else take my spot. That's against the culture I think they're trying to build. Jarvis Landry wanted that much money to stay in Miami. Like, no, we're not paying you that much. Do you want to stay in Miami or don't you? No? Okay, we're gonna get you out of here. Jawan James was offered a contract. Do you want to stay or do you want us to put you on the option? Again, apparently he's gonna stay on the option. That's fine with me, I guess. They asked Pouncey to take a pay cut. Why? Because his production wasn't really fitting what he used to be. If he had still been Pro Bowl center caliber Mike Pouncey, then maybe he would have been worth his contract, but he didn't want to keep it. They asked him to take a pay cut. Whether you can argue the ethics of that if you want, but he said no, he wants out. Goodbye, Mike Pouncey. And Ndamukong Suh, do you want to take a pay cut to stay in Miami? We can't afford to keep you here. Nope. Okay, you're out. That, I think, is the culture the Miami Dolphins are trying to build. I think that is the culture change that everybody is talking about. Who do you care about more, yourself or the team? And I think that's what we're going for. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome in Duke. I know he heard everything that I just said, so I'll go ahead and let him respond.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Duke.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said.
That all you got?
Well, thanks for the call.
That was riveting commentary.
That was deep, dude, deep.
Well, I mean, there's nothing more to really add. I mean, I think that's what Gase is trying to do is, there's a fine line between wanting to when having a star player, to get that star player involved and active and stuff like that. At the same time, you want to have a team first mentality. So take, for example, if this is a true bona fide star, for example, like Julio Jones. Do you want Julio Jones to only get 60 or 70 targets on a season, or do you want to throw that guy the ball a lot because he's very, very good? So that's the line you've got to draw. I mean, with the talent that Miami had, of the guys that they've let go, I think Ndamukong Suh's the only one that really fits that bill. He's an elite player at his position. Now, the problem is his position, he was overpaid. He was getting quarterback money as a defensive tackle. That's a tough contract, even if he was a defensive end, which is a more highly paid position. But Jarvis Landry, J.J., I mean, Jarvis Landry was a star in the sense that he's popular, he's a face, people knew him. But I mean, I think a lot of his production was kind of manufactured in a way, and I don't think that he's a guy really that if they decided not to throw the ball to him 140 times, target him 140 times like they've been doing, and only threw 70 targets to him, I don't think the offense would hurt that much by doing that. But at the same time, I don't want to pay $16 million a year for a guy getting 70 targets. So I think it was Chad that I was listening to on YouTube that said, I think they're going to spread the ball around. I think you're going to have 5 or 6 guys that get 50 to 60 catches each, including your running back and a tight end. So I don't think we're going to see that big disparity with, one receiver getting 40 catches and the next guy getting 120. I think it's just going to even it out, and it's going to depend on matchups. One game, Albert Wilson might have favorable matchups, and he gets the ball a lot. The next game, it may be Devontae Parker or Jakeem Grant. So I think that's what they're trying to do is just get guys in that, they want to play, they want to catch the ball, but we don't have to worry about trying to, force feed them like we've been doing with Ajayi and Landry.
All right, Ian, I know that your clock's starting to run out a little bit, so let's go ahead and get your thoughts in.
So I was the one who actually mentioned about the ball getting spread around a little bit more with the other wide receivers now that Jarvis isn't there. But talking about culture change, and I know that was kind of what kind of started the whole conversation. Adam Gase has been attempting to, move the ship or redirect the ship since the first day he steps onto the ground at Davie, right, at the headquarters out there. And you've seen him put his stamp on many different things as the seasons have gone on. You think about, when Dallas Thomas and those guys got released, and when they benched Ajayi, the season before last, and now that they've made some significant changes, like, as Duke just mentioned, some very popular players, some very well-known and well-liked players that were recently let go. He has made some extreme decisions, but I think those extreme decisions are all for the benefit of changing that culture, saying, hey, listen, guys, we just came off a 6-10 season, right? Yes, we had a backup quarterback the entire season. We had a couple of backup quarterbacks, actually, the entire season.
Yeah, one of them was starting, but go ahead.
even knowing that, the expectation was for us to have a winning season. As a coach, as a team, it's not up to one player to win football games. It's up to an entire team. And the team basically failed in getting to the goal that they wanted. So I think at this point, Gase, Tannenbaum, Greer, they've all said they're not accepting status quo. We're not going to re-sign players and pretend like everything is going to be okay or everything was okay. I think that's why they've made some of these drastic decisions. And let's be honest, we've said it before. if the fans were the ones picking draft picks or picking free agency, we'd probably be about $300 million over the cap. And we'd have, who's that guy that went over to Cleveland, was the first round pick that year? I forget as a quarterback. Brady Quinn would have been our quarterback.
Oh, Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn would have been our quarterback for many years. And we would have been in a worse off situation than we were. So I'm trusting the front office guys to make those decisions, because guess what? That's what they do every single day. That's what they eat, live, breathe. They live for football. So I'm trusting that they're making the decisions that are going to be best for the Miami Dolphins. And you know what? As fans, we're just going to have to wait till the season starts to see how it ends up. Everything looks great on paper. Everything looks horrible on paper until they actually start putting pads on and hiking the football. So as always, I'm excited because I think these changes are going to be for the benefit. I think our culture is heading in the right direction. I think the days of us overspending for players is behind us. And let's go, man. Let's make it happen.
Okay, but real quick, Ian. Here's the problem that a lot of people are having is that you said something interesting, that you trust the front office. This is the main problem that a lot of people are having. They don't trust Tannenbaum to do the right thing. They don't trust Greer, and they're starting to lose trust in Gase because of the whole Cutler thing. So now the question, I guess, is what about them says that they've earned your trust despite everything else? Like, that's the thing about them that they're saying, is that why should we trust Tannenbaum and Greer and Gase to do the right thing based on what we've seen in the past? Why trust them now?
I think the answer to that is simple. I think it's just that they're trying different things. They are not saying everything is okay and feeding you, trying to sell ice to an igloo. They know that there are issues, and they're trying to address those issues. And how they're doing it, may be different from what fans would say or fans would recommend, but they are trying. And I will tell you, every single person in that office, all the way up to Stephen Ross, they want a winning football team. And I think they're going to try and do everything in their power to get there. Now here's the caveat, right? Let's pretend right now that we're the New York Jets and we just traded up from the 6th spot to the 3 spot in the upcoming draft. And we've given up, a couple of second-round picks this year, one next year. Let's say they pick a quarterback, and that quarterback ends up being a dud, right? What's going to happen to that front office in New York? They're not going to last very long, right? I think we're now on Adam Gase's 3rd season. He has turned over the roster to really, after this coming draft, it is going to be his roster. These are the guys that he selected, because there's not too many guys left from before when he got here. And Tannenbaum, the same exact thing, right? I know Tannenbaum was here for a little while longer, but I think he is, this is it. This is the 3rd season. You've had an opportunity to draft offense. You've had an opportunity to draft defense. In this season now, it's going to be really to fill some of those additional holes that you have. So I think this is going to be it. This is going to be a really telling season, because I think everybody in that office knows how important this upcoming season is. Not to say they're going to be fired after this year, but if they start out 0-3, 0-4, there's going to be a lot of talk. But they're trying, man. They are definitely trying to do the right thing. They're trying to get a winning football team on the field. And I think Gase has the right attitude to change the culture. So that's what I think. Hopefully that answers your question, Lewis.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. Now, I want to go ahead and let Chad and Ron have a chance to talk about culture too. So, Ron, let's go with you first. What do you think about my theory and what Ian just said about the whole culture change thing? Are you buying it?
No, 100% buying it. I'm not sitting here saying 100% I believe it's going to make us win more. But like I said to open the show, I cannot think of a coach that went into any team and got rid of this much level of talent. Usually they'll try and send a message by cutting guys down at a little bit further down at the roster, even guys like Belichick. But you saw Belichick. He'll bench a guy for not doing what he's supposed to be doing or not being part of the team, or he'll cut a guy. He's maybe the only other one because he knows he can continue to win without that one guy or those couple guys. And I think Gase finally made up his mind that if you're going to have a culture mentality, like it's about the culture, it's about the team, it's about everybody being on board, then you can't say that stands for most players, but not Ndamukong Suh or not Landry because they're super talented. You have to be that way and have that mentality with every guy on your roster, no matter how much dead money it would cost you to cut him, no matter how talented he is, no matter how big of a hole it would cost to get rid of him. Now, do you think people on the team have their eyes wide open and their ears to the to the coach, listening to what he says to try and make sure that they fly right? I'd say that every single person that comes in that team knows now, man, you better do things the right way or you'll be cut. If they cut Sue or cut Ajayi or trade him, I should say, because perhaps they just weren't on board or they wanted to voice their negative opinions too much in the locker room or wanted to cause issues. Boy, I tell you what, if you're number 40, 50 on the roster, you sure as heck know he's going to get rid of you. That's not going to be a problem. I mean, I really feel that all of a sudden, if Tannehill or something decided to, and I don't think he would be that way. I think Gase and Tannehill, or I should say Tannehill's a Gase guy. If all of a sudden he decided that he wanted to be that way, wanted to have that negative attitude, wanted to have a problem, I think he'd be gone in a second too. That's the honest truth. Yeah, I don't think it matters to them anymore how talented you are and how much money you make. That's the right way to do it. Doesn't mean that they're going to win this way, but if you're going to have that mentality, you got to be 100% in, and I'll give them credit, Gase credit specifically. They're 100% in on this strategy because their moves so far have proven that, and I think they'll continue that way with all the free agent signings they make and every draft pick they grab. They are not going to take chances on guys with questionable character. They're going to want They're going to want locker room guys, leader guys, captain of the football team, captain of their linebacking core or whatever it is. Those are the guys they're going to want to bring onto this team at least through this season and into the near future. And we're going to see if it worked out. I remember one time Tony Sperano, he did an entire draft that if you weren't like a team captain or something like that, that was pretty much everybody they drafted. I mean, it didn't end up working. It didn't end up making us win, but that was kind of a strategy. But the question is, did he allow, bigger time players to voice their opinion and be negative and not do everything they were supposed to do? That's possible. This is going to be from top to bottom. So whether we like it or agree with it or not, I think this is going to be the number one focus before anything else.
And go ahead, Chad. I wanted to hear your thoughts on the culture change.
I think the culture change is being a little overdone in the media. What I think is the focus is going to be on diversity, and you can call that a culture change because selfish players just are not working. And we've heard that really some unbelievable stuff that from a professional with Ajayi, where he was refusing to come off the field. We've heard Ndamukong Suh at times was freelancing on defense and not playing within what they wanted him to do in the scheme, but rather what he thought he should be doing in the scheme. And we saw Landry explode on the sideline because Gase decided to try giving the ball to Jakeem Grant instead of him in a critical point in a game. And I think, again, I hate the parallel with the Patriots, but when you think about the Patriots and the players they have, whether it's LeGarrette Blount or White or Dion Lewis or
Danny Amendola
or Gronk. Any given week, they're always the worst freaking players to have in fantasy because they'll go from 150 yards and 2 touchdowns to like 5 yards. And the reason is the Patriots play personnel that give other teams difficult matchups. And I think that's what Miami's trying to do right now. I think they're looking at, if we have a young cornerback that tends to get out of position, we're going to match him up on Danny Amendola and let him just tear him apart with knowing what routes to run based on where he's lining up. If they have a big receiver our big cornerback that's a little bit slow, maybe we're not going to play a lot of Devontae Parker and we're going to match him up with one of our faster wide receivers and make him try to cover some quick slants and things like that. And what it is you're looking at trying to win matchups. And one thing the Patriots have always been good at is taking away what you're good at and making you try to beat them with what you're not so good at. And that, again, that's I think what you're looking at is it's a diversity where, it's a culture change in that anybody that's worried about how many yards they're getting or what their stats are, Miami may not be the right team for them anymore. They're looking for players that are dedicated to the offense, and I guess you can call that a culture change, but it's clearly something they're doing is that even talking about DeMarco Murray. It's clear Danny Amendola is not coming in here to replace Jarvis Landry. I don't expect Danny Amendola will get a ton of catches in this offense, but I think he's going to be critical in helping the young receivers learn to do pre-snap reads, and I think he'll be used very specifically depending on what other teams have for matchup issues. And I think you're going to continue to see that trend in the draft, is they're going to be looking at specific guys that can give matchup troubles that they don't have on the roster right now. And whether that's in the running back position or the tight end position, that's what they're looking to add. And so I think it's just something to keep an eye on. That's what Adam Gase is doing now, is he wants guys with specific skill sets that are very smart and that know where they're supposed to go, and they're prepared to execute on game day. And so I think at the very least, you're going to see a much cleaner executing Dolphins team. Now, it remains to be seen when you take some of your talent away if those players are going to be able to win matchups based on talent, but at least you're not losing based on mistakes. And I think as the fans and Adam Gase both that's what we're tired of seeing. I mean, I think back to the Tampa Bay game last year. We were obviously a lot better team than Tampa Bay was when we played them last year. And we just kept making mistakes. You keep getting false starts, and you keep having passes that go off where receivers aren't in the right spots, or all of a sudden 3 receivers are in the same location, and you feel pretty confident somebody ran the wrong route right there. And all that mental air stuff, it's hard to start winning when you can't even execute. And so I think at the very least, that's the primary culture change, is being able to know your responsibility and not being all hepped up on what your stats are, rather you're much more worried about trying to get a win.
Exactly. So, Ian, are you still here, man?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, man. Like I said, if you need to go, you can just go if you need to. But we're gonna keep going for a little bit, because I think I did ask for some feedback on whether we should do the hour show or hour and a half, and a lot of people said that no, if it's once a week, it's an hour and a half. So we're gonna go ahead and keep going for a little while longer. But if you need to go, you can go. But feel free to stick around if you want to play it. If you want to play Live Dangerously.
Hey, Lewis. Lewis.
What?
Do we have another what? Do we have another caller in? It looks like there was a fifth person in, and I didn't know.
That's Duke.
Oh, duh. Okay, sorry, Duke.
I don't know if he's still on the. I don't know if he's still technically hearing or not, because I see him there in the chat. Like, Duke, are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. It's like I see him typing and talking. So I'm like, okay. Anyway, so I want to go ahead and get to some of the questions in the chat, because we do have a few, and one of them is right at the very first thing that we actually asked. So it was from Andrew, and his question was, should we predict the Dolphins' record this coming season? He says 8-8. What do you guys think? Ian, you're technically still here. Give a quick prediction.
Man, I'm not going to give a prediction. It's just so early. You got to see what's going to happen with the draft. You got to see where, how the holes are going to be filled. I'll tell you a position, and I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think the position that's really going to determine if we have a winning record or we don't have a winning record, that's the tight end position. You see what last year was like when we had some subpar tight ends. I think if we've got a solid tight end, maybe we pick one up in the first. I wouldn't say the first round, because I think that's too soon, but maybe second or third or fourth round. Somebody who can actually step in and make a difference right from the bat, which I know is hard to do from a draft perspective. But if you find the right guy, I think we could have a winning record. But there's so many other things too. You got to find out. Raekwon McMillan, is he healthy? We've got to fill Timmons' spot. We've got. Is Tannehill going to come back as a guy? I just think it's so darn early. My optimistic self is always, it's our year. We're going to the Super Bowl. But I think we can't go that far just yet, my friend. Can't go that far just yet.
Yeah, it's going to be a while, I think, before we can get that far. But I do think we can get to the playoffs. I'm actually going to go ahead and say that the Dolphins get back to 10-6. I think a lot of people. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say his name again. I know it drives people crazy on this show and a lot of people everywhere out there. But you know what? I still think that Ryan Tannehill makes more of a difference than anybody is willing to admit. I just got a tweet from somebody who pointed out to me Greg Rosenthal's quarterback rankings, and apparently in his mind, Ryan Tannehill is the 23rd quarterback in the NFL. And I'm just like, Okay, fine, whatever. Let him prove you wrong. Go ahead and keep thinking that Tannehill's garbage. I don't care. We all see what he does on tape, and that's all that I care about. So I'm gonna go ahead and predict 10-6 just based on Tannehill returning and the new shiny offensive line that he's getting. Duke, how about you?
Well, I think it's too early to say, and mainly because of what you said about Ryan Tannehill. And I would go so far as to agree with what Greg Rosenthal put in there, mainly because we really don't know how he's going to play coming back from this injury. And one of the things about Tannehill was his incredible toughness, the hits that he would take. I remember when he went down, somebody on the broadcast said, it was one of those deals where he always got hit and just got back up every time, and he didn't get back up this time. So it's going to depend on if his play becomes, if he starts playing scared, if he's worried about that knee, if he's starting to feel phantom pressure that's not there and doing things that he wasn't doing before. If he can play back to where he wasn't before that injury in 2016, then the Dolphins can win 10 games or more. If not, then they're going to struggle. And the question is going to be how quickly can he get that back? So let's say he does. Is that going to happen week 1, week 2, week 5? When is that? So hopefully Gase can kind of gauge what's going on and say, all right, we're going to restrict our offense a little bit. We're going to do some things differently until he's 100% comfortable. And, we know what Tannehill is going to say. He's going to say, I'm 100% comfortable, coach. I can go in there and do it. But it's what it's going to look like on the field. So I think for the first couple of weeks, they'll be a little bit conservative. And then probably after the first quarter of the season, week 5, 6, somewhere in that range, we're going to see it open up the playbook a little bit and see more downfield passing, more of those plays like we saw, that incredible throw against San Diego, stuff like that. I don't think Gase is going to subject Tannehill to that right off the bat. So with that in mind, it's going to determine how well the rest of the team plays in that first little bit. I mean, you don't want to start 0-4, but I think they can get going mid-season. So I don't know. And it just depends how the schedule falls. One of the good things, I'm hoping the schedule falls this way, is we've got 3 away games in domes. So I'm hoping we can get those at the end of the season. Indianapolis, Houston, which is not really a cold weather city, but Indianapolis and Minnesota. If we can get those later in the season, that's just less weather we have to worry about.
All right. Does anybody else want to give a season prediction, or do you guys feel like it's too early anyway?
I feel like it's too early because we're still 30-plus players away from a full training camp roster. That's quite a big jump there. But I mean, I look at this roster now and I think 6 wins, but we're so far away from a full roster. I mean, they're going to add some more free agents. They're going to have a full draft. They're going to add a bunch of undrafted free agents. Maybe they even pull off one more little trade here and there. Something. We're just so far away from knowing what the 2018 Miami Dolphins team will even look like. It's really hard to say that how many wins they'll have, what they'll look like. And then there's all those other questions that you guys have been talking about on top of that.
All right, so then we'll just go ahead and go to the next question. Randy Constance asked a long time ago. I'm sorry, everybody on the chat. We're just now getting to you, but we're going to go ahead and get to you now. So Randy Constance asks, who is the best tight end fit for this Dolphins team? So I'll go ahead and take this real quick. I only got a chance to take a look at one guy so far, and that's Mike Gesicki of Penn State. Now, Gesicki, a lot of people were saying that, he's just Michael Agnew again. Well, okay, yes and no, because we've seen what Michael Agnew does. When Michael Agnew runs, it looks like he's a tank trying to move at 60 miles an hour. It just doesn't work. So you can't go that fast with Agnew. Gesicki is smoother and he's faster, and he's also leaner than Agnew was. So, and the only thing that they do have in common, though, is that they were rotten, and I do mean rotten blockers. Duke, I showed you the film review that I posted before I posted it. You saw how bad Gesicki is at blocking, like that, and the dude just lays down and curls up into a ball, and that's his attempt at a cut block. It just doesn't work. So the only way you want Gesicki to be blocking is if you like losing yards. So with that in mind, Gesicki could help if he showed up, but he's only a weapon. Do not ask him to do anything else. Do not try to get him to do anything else, because if that is what your plan is, then you're going to fall apart. So my guess is Gesicki, is not a good fit, and the only reason I don't give an actual name is because I haven't looked at anybody else yet. But Duke, I know for a fact that you're keeping an eye on things, so you mentioned the name earlier this week before I did the film review.
I think Hayden Hurst is probably the most complete tight end in this draft. He's older because he played baseball, so I think he's a guy that could come in and probably have more of an immediate impact. I don't remember who was saying it, but someone did mention earlier that tight ends is not exactly that position is not one that you're going to come in as a rookie and just dominate. You don't expect a rookie tight end to come in and get 10 or 12 touchdowns or something. So it's usually a year or two before they get going. So I think he can come in and make more of an immediate impact. I really like him. I watched him at the combine. He looked very fluid and in the drills. He will block, so he can do that. I've seen some highlight footage of him. But I was wanting to know what he ran. I think he ran like a 4.7, which is good. I like Mark Andrews. I think he's the detached tight end that Adam Gase would like. I would like him actually better than Gesicki. I think Gesicki's 40 time is a little bit overblown. He's a very, very long strider, and I mentioned that on the broadcast. And if you watch, he was taking like 3 yards a stride, it seemed like. He's not going to do that on the field. So he's probably a little bit, play time, a little bit slower than his 40 time. But I think Andrews and Hurst are the guys that you can get probably where Miami picks in the second round. And I wouldn't be surprised if Miami doesn't go with another tight end in the draft. Another name that I'm kind of keeping an eye on is Ian Thomas.
Another Thomas, good Lord.
Yeah, he's, I think he's a good athlete. I think he fits more of that Charles Clay role where he kind of moves around, stuff like that. And I'm going to be honest, I'm probably the only Dolphins fan out there that if they went into the season with what they've got on the roster, I think they're not. It's not going to kill them that bad. I think Marquise Gray, there's untapped potential there. I liked what he did in 2016. I thought they would use him more in 2017. I think kind of the love fest for Julius Thomas kind of got in the way, and so they kind of used him as a fullback, and more than anything else. I liked what he did as a receiver. I think they can use him more. And I think people seem to forget that, when Jordan Cameron went down, it was, they rolled with Deion Sims,
Dominique Jones, Gray,
and Dominique Jones as their tight ends. And there was times when Sims wasn't in there, and it was just Gray and Jones. And Jones has never caught, I think he's caught like maybe 3 or 4 passes in a career until that season. Marquise Gray hadn't really caught much. So, they were effective with those guys. And the main thing is those guys were blockers. They weren't the seam threat deal. And I think if Miami didn't get that kind of tight end, they would be okay simply because they've got like 1,000 receivers. So they've got 5 receivers out there that they can roll with. And if you include, the running back position, throw Drake out there in the slot, you've got guys to say, you know what, I'm not worried about the tight end. I can get mismatches with my receivers and running backs. That said, I would like to see them draft running back, and I also think Derby has got some potential there. I like what I saw from him. He would have probably scored 2 or 3 touchdowns this year if Cutler and Fales and Moore had been more accurate. I know there was one, I think it was against Kansas City, where Derby had a touchdown, had the guy beat, and Cutler just overthrew him by a mile. And so I saw that, and I was kind of like, you're all disappointed, but then you thought, you know what, the guy got open, so that's a good sign. So I think they will go with tight end, but don't be surprised if Derby doesn't get a lot more touches this year. Same for Gray. I think they're just trying to give Gase all these myriad of weapons, and I like it.
All right, Ron, Chad, anything you want to add to tight ends? You guys got some thoughts on who you like?
Go ahead, Chad. Is
Chad
there?
He should be.
All
I
right,
didn't hear a blue.
Do you hear me okay? Oh, go ahead.
I hear you.
Okay. I didn't have a specific tight end in the draft that I see the targeting, but there is one thing that you can just watch in what they're doing. And, obviously DeMarco Murray's in there right now. They've had, these different players that they've come in and signed, but you haven't really noticed Miami bringing in Tyler Eifert, Eric Ebron.
Thank God for that.
Right. But my point being is it would appear to me that they have somebody in mind or a couple guys in mind in this draft. And so they're not really eager to go out and sign a guy right now so that they can be in a position to just do best player available. It looks to me like they feel pretty good about waiting until after the draft to go get a tight end. And not to change the topic too much, but that's very apparent with quarterback too. I know that's what Twitter's on fire about is Miami going to take a rookie quarterback? And I don't believe that Fales is the plan to be the backup quarterback this year. So no way. Miami has not shown any real interest in any of the veteran quarterbacks on the market so far. And so that again tells me they've got somebody in mind in this draft, whether that's at pick 11 or moving up or somebody they feel really good about in the second or third round maybe. But it is very clear that Miami intends to get their tight end and their backup quarterback, and I think probably a defensive tackle, all three of those positions in this draft, based on what they're doing with free agent visits right now.
Let me just say this. Considering what the Jets just had to give Indianapolis to move up 3 spots, I wouldn't move a muscle in this draft unless you're going down.
Well, here's a scenario. This is just my opinion on what's going on in this draft right now. Obviously, the Jets feel good about getting their quarterback at 3, or they feel equal about 3 of the quarterbacks, and they'll just take whichever one falls to them.
Yeah, after signing McCown and Bridgewater.
Right. But I don't believe that Buffalo's moving up to number 1. Buffalo obviously is planning to move up. I mean, anybody who's watching their moves knows Buffalo's positioning themselves to get a quarterback right now. I don't think they're moving up to number 1 because they could do that deal right now. Buffalo has a pile of picks. And if you're moving up to number 1, you're just moving up to get your guy. There's no mystery. And that trade has yet to happen. And so I think Cleveland has decided they're either taking the running back, Barkley, or they're taking their quarterback at number 1. I don't believe the Giants are going to trade unless it's a massive, massive deal you're offering, because the Giants need a quarterback. And I don't think the Giants plan on being in the top 5 picks for the next few years. And so their time is now to replace Eli Manning. I don't think they're going to trade out of that pick. I think the Giants are taking a quarterback at 2. And now the Jets have moved up. They're obviously taking a quarterback at 3. And so that brings up
3 second-rounders, Chad.
Right. But that brings up the 4th overall pick is where it's going to happen, is the 4th pick. And I think Buffalo is going to be forced to give up more than the Jets gave up to move to 3, simply because they're going to have no choice. If 3 quarterbacks come off the board, and they're there, and Denver sitting at 5, you can't feel good about letting that quarterback you want try to go past Denver, because Denver wants a quarterback of the future as well. And so with all that being said, where that plays in for Miami is my belief right now is I believe that Cleveland is going to draft Barkley, number 1 overall, and I think they want Lamar Jackson. It makes all the sense in the world that they've got Tyrod Taylor in there, and they want to put Lamar Jackson behind him and be able to run the same offense with either quarterback. That's where Buffalo's 12 or Miami's 11 can come into play, is if the Browns feel good about dropping back and getting Lamar Jackson at 11 or 12, that 4th overall pick is where the action is going to happen in this draft. That's what I think. And so as I'm saying that, is Miami's pick is a little bit better at 11 than 12 for Cleveland, because for the reasons I just said, Miami hasn't made any effort to go out and look at veteran quarterbacks. Cleveland knows that, just like I know it. And so Cleveland, how good are they going to feel if they really want a quarterback? If Cleveland does not take a quarterback number 1 overall, and they're going to trade their 4th round pick, how good do they feel that Lamar Jackson is going to go past Miami? I don't know that Miami's interested in him, but it might actually be more appealing for them to trade with Miami to be at 11 rather than be at 12, just to remove Miami from the equation as somebody who might take him.
And you run.
So you're saying,
Wait, who's?
well, let me ask real quick. So are you saying that Miami would give the 4th pick? They're going to have to give up less than Buffalo because they're trying to get ahead of Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm saying I think the Cleveland Browns want Lamar Jackson. I think that's who they want, and they realize they don't have to take him that high.
Okay, so my question then is if let's say that's the case, they're trying to get Buffalo out of the equation. Who does Miami get it for?
Well, I think if Miami's moving up, Cleveland doesn't. I don't think Miami really wants Lamar Jackson. I want him, but I don't think that Gase wants him. It just doesn't seem like.
Chad, I'm pretty sure if Miami moved up, it would end up being for that guy.
I don't know, Louis. It really depends on who people are targeting, and so I think the best fit in the draft for Gase would be Josh Rosen, and I don't know if that's what Miami's wanting or not. All I know is right now Miami feels comfortable waiting right now on the most important position to just sit still. And as much as I like Ryan Tannehill, the fact is he's had 2 seasons in a row with knee trouble. I know it's the same knee, but the Dolphins can't be right now planning on going into a season with Tannehill and Fales as their 2 quarterbacks right now. There's somebody in the draft they feel good about being the backup to Ryan Tannehill right now. And so, there's not that many quarterbacks in this draft. And so maybe there is one of these second-tier rated guys that Gase feels really good about getting in the 2nd or 3rd round. That could very well be the case. But I do know that Miami's in the mix for a quarterback. That's obvious. And I do know that the 11th pick versus the 12th pick is a big difference if Cleveland is actually targeting maybe Lamar Jackson. It just seems to me that's the right fit for Cleveland. That's who Cleveland's going to want, based on the coach, based on the quarterbacks they like, and the offense they're putting together. It seems a little strange to me that Cleveland's going to bring in Tyrod Taylor and then put a traditional drop-back quarterback like Rosen or behind him or Allen or one of these guys. It makes all the sense in the world that Cleveland would want to get Lamar Jackson behind Tyrod Taylor. And so
if I'm Miami in this situation, and this is a dangerous game to play, but this is how I would try to play it. I don't know how enamored they are with these quarterbacks. I know they've wined them, dined them, and whatever else. But if I'm Miami, if I'm the Browns, if the Browns call up and they say, we want you to have the 4th pick, and I'm Miami, I'm like, I don't want the 4th pick. I'm not interested in that pick. Buffalo's not going to take Lamar Jackson. So, for the same reason you're saying Cleveland wants Lamar Jackson. So they're going to go get their guy. Well, now they've moved back to 12. At that point, as soon as that happens, if I'm Miami, I let every possible leak in the building out that I'm taking Lamar Jackson at 11. And then I get Cleveland to jump. Then Cleveland calls up and says, all right, I want to move to 11. I'll say, all right, I'll take your 12 in a second and then some of the pick. And then they get Lamar Jackson. Miami moves down to 1 spot, gets whatever defensive player they were going to take at 11, and then gets an additional 2nd-round pick or something like that. Again, that's a lot of ifs and moving parts, but that's how I would try to play this.
I agree with you completely. Or, for the same reason, you get Cleveland spooked enough to trade back up. That, if they're at 4, maybe they want to jump to 8 or 9 or something to get in front of Miami to ensure they're going to get him. And this is all a theory if Cleveland doesn't take quarterback number 1. If they take Barkley number 1, to me, then Lamar Jackson's in play for Cleveland. And if that happens, let's say the 4 quarterbacks go that people think are going to go, Mayfield and Allen and all those Rosen and all those quarterbacks go. If they all go in the first 5 or 6 picks, and Cleveland really wants Lamar Jackson, if they can get Cleveland to jump up and get Lamar in front of them, it does nothing but just continue to drop these really good blue chip type players down the draft board. I mean, I'm looking at Denver right now with Von Miller, and I know they want a quarterback, but how are they going to feel if it goes 4 quarterbacks and they get Chubb, at 5 to pair him with Von Miller or Fitzpatrick? There's just some very talented players. Or Nelson. Yeah, so Miami can just wait at 11, and they're going to get a very good player.
The team to watch in the trade back in that situation would be Indianapolis because they can get more picks, and they can move to 6. So you'd have all 5 of your quarterbacks, let's say it'd be 1, 2, 3, let's see, well, you'd have 3 quarterbacks.
Aren't they already at 6, Duke?
What's that?
Aren't they already at 6 when they traded with the Jets?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If the Browns are going to trade, let's say they've traded back. Okay, they've given up the 4th pick, and now Buffalo has the 4th pick. So let's say they've taken Barkley 1, and you've got 3 of the 4 quarterbacks go in the top 3. All right, so you've got Giants are taking a quarterback, Jets and Bills take a quarterback, 2, 3, 4. At that point, you've got a 4th quarterback there. The Broncos take him. So you could have 5 quarterbacks go back to back to back to back to back. Because the Colts, they want to acquire more picks. So the Browns could move up from 12 and whatever else to get to the 6th pick. At which point, now you have all the quarterbacks in Barkley, which Barkley wasn't going to make it to Miami anyway. So now you have, starting at the 6th pick, Fitzpatrick, James, Nelson, Smith, Edmonds. That's 5 players I just named, not counting some others. And one of those 5 will be available for Miami at 11. So, again, that's a dangerous game to play, and I honestly don't know that Miami's front office is smart enough to play that game. But if they pull that off, more power to them, because all this quarterback talk, and I know fans are enamored with quarterbacks, but it's pushing defensive talent up the board, and Miami is going to get a blue-chip defensive player at 11. My guy is Vita Vea. I don't know if he wouldn't necessarily be the popular pick because he's a defensive tackle, but that guy's a destroyer of worlds on the inside. He is a disruptive one-tech. They've compared him to Haloti Ngata. You put that guy with Phillips, Godshaw, Taylor, who have played the 3-tech. You put them on the interior. Particularly, he's a guy that you could leave in nickel packages because he's such a beastly dude in the middle, that you could use a guy like Hayes or even Branch, Harris, or whoever else as interior rushers on 3rd down, and you're still not worried about the run defense because he's probably going to eat up a lot of space in there. So, again, I don't know. I love these strategy tactics that they try to play. Hopefully it works out that way. So we will see who the first pick in the draft is, and I'm thinking if they do go quarterback, it's going to be Sam Darnold. Hugh Jackson's got the USC connections. That would be who I think they would take. But if it is Barkley, heck, or even Chubb, let's say they went Chubb at number 1. Pair him up with Garrett from last year. Then you can see that cascade effect starting there, and Miami's kind of they can pull some strings if they wanted to.
Ron, you get in the whole. You listening to this? These guys playing poker here with the draft picks. Holy moly!
Okay, I'll talk to it a little bit. A couple of things. First, I'll talk about the tight end position. The Dolphins aren't going into this season with Marquise Gray and a rookie, and then Thomas
AJ
Duarte.
Derby.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, that's not happening. They're gonna sign some aged vet at least for a year or two. It'll buy into the, hey, maybe they draft a guy in 1st or 2nd round. I don't think there's really a first round guy at 11.
The only guy left out there seems like is Eric Ebron, and they're not interested.
Eric Ebron or Antonio Gates. They're going to draft some kind of veteran. Maybe Gates fits the picture after the draft or something. Just that put him in for a year. When Hunter Henry wasn't playing last year when he was hurt, actually Gates came in, was still able to produce. We know he's a good guy. He's a locker room guy, all that stuff. That kind of fits with what they would do this year. They'll go out and do something like that. It's not exciting, but they're not going in like that. They may be even going to draft a tight end really high, but they're not going to roll like that into the season. They're going to make some kind of move, or they decide to pull off some kind of trade. Again, I don't think it'll be elaborate and flashy, but they're going to do something else at that position. And then secondly, as far as the draft goes, they're not drafting a quarterback in the first round. Period. End of story. They're going to sit right there at 11. They're going to take a top 7 overall non-quarterback talent in this draft and enjoy it. That's my opinion. They're not drafting a quarterback in the first round. They may go second, third, fourth, but they're not drafting a first-round quarterback.
You're not playing poker with the draft picks, Ron?
No, and I'm not even going to say that they might not move around a little bit, but I don't think they move up for a non-quarterback, especially as expensive as that would be to do. And I just don't see them doing that. They're going to sign one of these aged veterans for a year or two that we have out there. None of those names are going to be interesting. Blaine Gabbert, Mark Sanchez, Austin Davis, etc. None of those are exciting names, but they're going to take somebody that's got some starting experience and put them behind Tannehill just in case and roll with that for another season. I don't see any move that they've made this year that says, especially restructuring Tannehill, and you can't get away from him for 3 seasons now, let's go draft a first-round overall pick. I don't see it. That's just my opinion, and I don't think it makes sense for them this year. But who knows? They're checking all these guys out. Maybe there's somebody they're absolutely in love with, but overall, I feel like they're not going to do that this season.
Okay, wait, but you mentioned a veteran quarterback, but if that was the case, then why bother with David Fales?
No, they still have fails. They're going to go in with 4 quarterbacks on the roster at camp. That's what most teams do. They'll roll in with 4 quarterbacks at camp. So I mean, they still have some work to do at that part of the roster.
I absolutely disagree with you on this one, Ron. And the reason I do is because of last season is Adam Gase, Mike Tannenbaum, both those guys cannot afford for Ryan Tannehill to get hurt in the first few games of the season or the preseason and have a backup quarterback that is not capable be the starter of this team. They will lose their jobs, flat out lose their jobs.
Well, you could always give Jay Cutler another $10 million.
No, that's why they're going to go sign like Blaine Gabbert or Mark Sanchez for a season.
You absolutely will lose your fan base if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt in the preseason and your quarterback is Mark Sanchez the rest of the season.
His name is Butt Fumble. Say it right.
I don't disagree. They may sign a veteran, but I feel very strongly that they have a quarterback in mind in this draft that they feel like they're going to be able to get. That's why they're not doing anything right now. Now, you may very well be right, and I believe it's the right move to not move up and grab one of the top 4. But one of these guys, whether it's Mike White or whoever that quarterback is it's time. I think Gase knows this, and Tannenbaum knows it, that Adam Gase was brought in here because he is a quarterback guru. That is one of the things he's supposed to be very, very good at, is developing quarterbacks and helping quarterbacks. And so how can you justify having Gase as your head coach with Tannehill, he's a bigger injury risk now because of his knee? I'm not saying he's injury prone, Lewis. I'm just saying Ryan Tannehill today is more likely to have a knee injury than Ryan Tannehill 2 years ago because of his history with his knee now. He's got a scarred knee. I just think this team needs to get the next heir apparent to Ryan Tannehill in development. They absolutely don't need a quarterback that's going to come in and start day one in the draft. But you can't do another Brandon Doughty. It's not going to be a practice squad guy. The quarterback coming in has to be a guy they would feel comfortable with Gase developing to be a starting quarterback. Whether he takes. Go ahead.
I'm going to say, in this NFL, you don't move up and do all that to go get a top 4 or 5 pick and draft the quarterback of your dreams to sit him for 3 years behind Tannehill. And you don't extend Tannehill unless you plan on keeping him.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I don't think they're getting rid of Tannehill.
Those moves just don't go hand in hand to me. I mean, maybe they're willing to pay Tannehill to just be there, injured, not playing, and go do it anyway. But then again, I mean, if you were willing to do that, why were you willing to restructure him just for money? I mean, I don't even think they're going to need all the money that they saved on him alone.
I absolutely don't think their intent is to replace Ryan Tannehill at all. I think he's the guy. What I think is this team realizes you can no longer use this structure of it being a Matt Moore type backup. I mean, the names you're talking about, you might as well bring Matt Moore back. You're not going to win with Blaine Gabbert or Mark Sanchez. Those guys can't win consistently in the NFL. That's proven. And so I just believe they need a developmental guy. Now, it doesn't have to be the top 5 picks, and I think that would be the move not to do. But you look at how the teams that have successfully done it, like A.J. McCarron's and Jimmy Garoppolo, these are quarterbacks that were brought in not as top 10 picks, but they were, second, third round type guys that the team developed for a few years, and those guys become very valuable one way or the other, whether you're going to use them to gain draft picks and trade them off, or if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt, or if Ryan Tannehill just simply over the next couple of years just shows he's not the guy. That's your plan B. And if you don't have plan B in place right now, that you're in trouble. And to me, that all you're doing with the Mark Sanchez is you're putting yourself in a position where if Tannehill gets hurt, you're done. And so,
I agree that they'll draft a quarterback in the second or third round. I have no problem with that, and I think it's very likely they do. I'm saying is they're not going to draft one in the first round this year. It's just not.
I don't think
that is
so
not
either.
The plan for them. Second or third round, I could see it. And why not draft a second or third round guy and sign like a 1-year Sanchez vet as well? I don't see anything wrong with that strategy either. I'm
100% agree. 100%.
I think that's probably the strategy, and then fails goes bye-bye. That's probably likely the smartest thing they could do. Draft a second or third round guy, sign a vet to 1 year, not Jay Cutler, please God no, and
Cutler won't take a backup role anyway, so don't worry.
And then see what happens. That would probably make the position the most safe. So you've got Tannehill. Let's see if he's still got it. You've got a second, third round guy you could truly develop that has talent, and then you have Sanchez or somebody like that in case Tannehill can't go, and you're going to need somebody at least for some games until you feel comfortable enough to put the second round rookie in.
Absolutely.
I think that is the strategy they should follow, drafting a guy in the first round. I don't think that's their plan.
No, I agree with you, Rod. Unless, with the only caveat, with depending if somebody unexpectedly falls. Like if I don't expect this to happen, but let's say you have Baker Mayfield or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson even. If any of those guys fall to 11, then I don't know that they might consider taking them there. I don't think they're going to give a bunch of picks to move up. They have too many needs. I mean, they need a starting tight end right now. They need a number 2 running back, and they need a defensive tackle. And you can't get all those things if you're giving up your picks to move up to get a quarterback to sit on the bench. You're absolutely right there. But we're all assuming those guys are going to be all gone. Except maybe for Lamar Jackson, but everybody's expecting those four quarterbacks to go quickly. But it may not happen that way. Maybe people aren't that high on Josh Allen because he's played at a small school and he'll fall down. And so that would be tempting in my mind if you're at 11 and you're Miami and you have one of those top 2 quarterbacks that they're in your lap there. But I agree with you. I don't think they're not intending to draft a quarterback in the first round. But again, I think it's clear they are intending to use the draft to get their backup quarterback.
I just have one question. Have we turned the clock back to 2009 or something? I mean, first of all, there was hints that Chad Henne could be coming back to be backup. Now we're talking about Mark Sanchez. I'm like, good Lord, that was a decade ago.
His name is Butt Fumble, Duke, and everybody else needs to understand that. We've changed his name. His name is Butt Fumble.
I have been around the fence side long enough to remember the debate on who was better, Sanchez or Henne. I don't want to go through
that. Sounds like an argument of whose poop smells better.
Yeah,
right, but that Duke is making a very good point.
Time.
Duke, you're making an excellent point because Miami reportedly, anyway, had some interest in maybe looking at Henne to come in, and that again. If you're Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum and Ryan Tannehill gets hurt week 1, you are not keeping your job if Chad Henne is what you put in place to be your backup for the rest of the year.
Unless you drafted a second or third round guy that there's no way to put in. But if it fails behind that guy, you're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fan base is going to have no mercy if your plan B was Chad Henne because they've already had enough Chad Henne. But my point being is they absolutely need that quarterback in the draft. So anyway, go ahead, Duke.
That was just if he ever throws another pass for Miami, that'll be one too many. That was let's be done with that. The same for Sanchez. He doesn't need to be anywhere near this place. But I'm probably the only one that likes Fells. I thought he looked good in that last game. I mean, he started out kind of rough. And that I attribute to that probably just the adrenaline rush. Having played basketball for a long time, when you first come in the game, that first shot, unless you're not in that groove, that first shot's usually off because you're trying to get settled in. Once he got settled in, I thought he did what you're supposed to do. I mean, I don't think Gase's offense is. I don't think there's going to be a lot of stuff in Gase's offense where you've got to go out there and make a bunch of calls at the line and do all of this stuff, particularly if you're the backup. I think if it got to the point where Fells was in the game in that situation, it was going to be, simple reads, simple calls, all that kind of stuff. I thought he did well. I thought the interception at the end of the game was simply just miscommunication. The receiver ran one way, Fells thought he was going to go another. And that may have been Fells' fault simply because he wasn't on the roster all season. But I like him. I mean, if you're going to go with a veteran quarterback like, assuming this plan goes where you've got a first round or you've got Tannehill, you've got the future heir apparent draft pick. Who cares who that third guy is? I just assume it be Fells as any of those other names that anybody's listed. Blaine Gabbert, Henny, Sanchez, whoever. Just take them and get them out of the league for all I care. I would take Fells over any of them. Now, I agree that if Fells is your number 2 guy and that's your only plan, then you've probably got a problem. I think I would be more okay with it than some fans. I might be optimistic like that. But absolutely, as your third guy, nothing those other guys do or offer is worth more than anything what the upside that Fells might have. I just don't see any reason to bring in a bum like Henny or Sanchez or Gabbert, any of these guys who have failed everywhere else, and they're going to fail in Miami for any other reason. I don't think there's anything they can teach a rookie that Tannehill couldn't teach the rookie, that Gase couldn't teach the rookie. So Tannehill, rookie, fails, pick up some dude to be a camp arm for that fourth, and forget about it. Don't even waste a free agent dime, even if it was zero guaranteed. Don't waste another dollar on any of these bums that are out there.
I mean, the only thing is, though, if your season's going well, and then all of a sudden Tannehill comes up lame, you're going to take a season that's going well and put it in the hands of a second or third round rookie, as opposed to a guy that's had some starts under his belt. I mean, that's the risk you run in that strategy. I'm not saying it's the wrong strategy. I'm all about saving some free agent money because I'm so tired of them spending money on a 1 or 2 year guy that's just filling a role that maybe we don't even need. But that could be the mindset that if the season's going the right way and Tannehill comes up lame, what are we going to do? We're going to throw it to the second round guy. I mean, that's risky. That's equally as risky in my mind. I'm thinking.
I mean, to me, if you're going to do that way, just bring Matt Moore back. I mean, unless the bridge has been burned where he's not coming back, I see no reason to bring in an outside guy like Chad Henne. I mean, I don't think he's going to win you enough games any more than what Matt Moore did. I don't think what Matt Moore did at the end of the season in 2016 would be outside of the capacity for what David Fells could do. Yeah, he had the big statistical night against New York, but that team was quitting. He threw that, that wobbly duck to Steele for the touchdown. He had a couple of good throws to Sims, and then that one Jarvis Landry chip to the house. And then against Buffalo, I mean, a vast majority of his yardage came on run after catch on passes that didn't travel. I think I calculated it traveled 10 yards total. The touchdown to Devontae Parker was a 7-yard pass. Devontae Parker bounced off a poor tackle and scores a 50-something yard touchdown or a 40-something yard touchdown. And then he throws a 2-yard pass to Damian Williams. He bounces off a tackle and gets 55 yards out of it. So, and I think he only had like 200 and some yards total for the game, and 100 of that came from those two plays. And then he sucked against the Patriots and the Steelers. So, honestly, for what you're going to get out of that backup, if people said, and I said the same thing too, as soon as Tannehill went down, the season was over. I mean, I've counted, and the reason I don't think Gase is really on that big of a hot seat was because, yeah, he brought in Cutler and all that, but it was a wasted season. I mean, he did what he could, but when your starting quarterback goes out, I don't care how good a guy like Jay Cutler is, there's a reason he was in the booth. And so, if it's week 13 again and Tannehill goes down, you're going to be screwed either way, even if you have a backup like Chad Henne or Butt Fumble or whoever else it is. So that might, in my opinion, that might as well be David Fells or your rookie. I mean, you're looking at the the back end of a dead dog on that one. So
Well, thank you for using his correct name, Duke. I appreciate that. Like, he'll never live that down. I'm never gonna let him live that down. So anyway, whew, it's been a good show, guys. I'm really happy with how this turned out. We got a few callers, and the chat was lively. Got a few tweets coming in. Oh, I guess I should make at least one acknowledgement. Humberto Oliveira in the chat says Fails is not Foles. Tannehill goes down, season's over. Yeah, that's what Duke said. He likes Fails, but he doesn't think Tannehill being out is. I don't think he doesn't think Fails is going to be enough to get the season saved.
And that's what I'm saying. Is like if your backup's in, you're probably screwed anyway. Why not let that be Fails? I mean, he's got infinitely more upside and potential to be better as a backup than established guys like Henny or Sanchez or whoever else that you know exactly the moment they start or play what you're getting. Well, I saw enough out of Fails last year from that game to say, hey, there's something there, not starter material necessarily, but there's enough there that, hey, if this guy's in the game, it may not be as bad as you think. Kind of a Matt Moore factor. When he comes in, you're kind of like, oh, well, we're not too bad. So, yeah, I'm good with Fails that way. Obviously, it's all going to depend on the draft pick. I mean, that's who you do. I mean, yeah, you don't go in with, God help us if it's, Sanchez, Fails, and Tannehill is your that would be the awfulest thing ever. So, yeah, that rookie's the guy. So he's the linchpin. So that third guy, I don't even care about.
All right, so there is one more person that I need to acknowledge, and I'm going to be fair about it because that's the way I want to be. Professor Lou did contact me on Twitter, and he said that he thinks that Calvin Ridley needs to be in the conversation in 11 as a BPA.
I don't think so, Lewis. I mean, I don't disagree with Calvin Ridley, but the only way that to me feasibly happens is if somehow in a trade on the draft day before the draft they trade Devontae Parker off. There's just too many. You're not going to cut Kenny Stills with his contract. You just signed 2 new wide receivers, and Devontae Parker's contract is still his rookie deal. And as we were saying before, Jakeem Grant, I think, is pretty well a lock to be the 5th wide receiver. So if you're bringing Calvin Ridley in, you're basically giving up 6 roster spots because you can't put any of those guys on the practice squad and keep them. And so,
I think the idea would be that if Calvin Ridley came in, Parker's out, and we actually have somebody with more potential again.
I don't disagree with that move, but I don't think you can just flat out cut Devontae Parker. Not at his contract, and despite him being hurt and struggling, to me it wouldn't make a lot of sense to just flat out cut him and get nothing for him. To me the only way Calvin Ridley becomes realistic for the Dolphins is if they trade off Parker, because I don't think any of the other receivers are tradable right now on their team to get anything out of. So if Devontae Parker got traded, then absolutely Calvin Ridley's he's definitely a pick worthy talent wise of the 11th round pick. If Miami takes a wide receiver or a defensive end at 11, I'm going to be at loss at what their plan is right now because they absolutely need a defensive tackle now with Sue gone, and it looks like there'll be a couple defensive tackles there that they could take, or they absolutely need tight ends, and they really don't have a number 2 running back yet. So I think it's hard to bring Ridley in with those holes and use that. That's their most valuable hole plugger right now is that 11th overall pick. Whether it is a quarterback or running back or a defensive player, that needs to be a prime starting player. And with Amendola, and you just put the money in Albert Wilson, and you have the money in Kenny Stills, and so you're going to bring in Ridley to start putting more of those guys on the bench. So I like the player. I just don't see the fit. That's all.
Yeah, and before the free agency pickups, they would have made sense because he would have kind of been the third guy. He would have been your Jarvis Landry replacement, and you could have had all those guys out there. But you're right that you're basically taking your most valuable draft pick for a guy that, number one, just doesn't feel a need, and 2, it goes back to what the discussion was with the culture change and the thing. You don't draft a guy. I mean, if you see him as a special talent, yeah. But if you're going to be spreading the ball around, then why waste a pick on a guy that's going to get 50, 60 targets every year? I mean, if that's the way you're going to play it, unless you think this guy's worthy of getting 100 to 150 targets or something. So I just don't see that move. Even though I think he fits what Gase wants in a receiver, I just can't see it happening as at 11. Now, if they traded down in some kind of maneuver and say he got into the 20s and he was still there and that was the best player available, yeah, but not at 11.
Ron, I know you've been quiet for a while.
No, I feel like we beat it up enough. I don't have much more to add.
Yeah, I think this show's kind of run its course. Like, I want to be fair to everybody and get everybody's question in, but it's like, oh my gosh, we'd be here for the next 2.5 hours. But it's like, I'm happy about how it turned out. I really am. This show has been one of the best shows we've ever done, and I'm really happy how it turned out. So thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and call this a night. I know you didn't say you had anything left to add, Ron, but before we just cut this whole thing off, any final thoughts as we continue until next week?
Just interested to see what kind of moves the Dolphins make, over maybe the next week or so. If they're going to sign any free agents, it'll probably just maybe be over the next 7 days to 10 days max. And then it's full draft focus after that. And you probably won't really see any signings of any kind of the current free agents till after the draft. That's usually how it goes. That's not just the Dolphins. It's most teams. So don't imagine much excitement in that end, really, going forward.
And it's the second tier free agency now. And so one thing to keep in mind is if you do see players signed, is keep an eye on their contracts, because you're looking to see if there's much for guarantees out there, because there's nothing wrong with the Dolphins signing a tight end right now or a running back right now. If the contract's favorable, you're getting another veteran into camp. And after the big wave of the big money has passed, this is kind of where you can do a little bargain shopping before the draft. And so that I do expect them to bargain shop a little bit, maybe add some depth. I think they could still use a veteran defensive tackle. It wouldn't shock me if they pick one up, to bring in some depth, but that doesn't, I think, deter where they're going in the draft at this point. I don't think they're bringing any big starters this week, more than likely. And one final thing with the Professor Lou, one thing I have agreed with him on Twitter is I think keep an eye on Kurt Benkert, I believe from Virginia. I watched a little bit of him, and he absolutely has a very live NFL-capable arm. Might be a quarterback that would fit very well to sit behind Tannehill for a year or two for Adam Gase to work with, because I think you always want that arm talent. If you can get that, might be a good developmental type quarterback people are sleeping on. That's all I got.
How about you, Duke? Final thoughts?
I think I'm good.
Well, okay, then. That was easy. All right, so the only final thoughts that I have to add before we go ahead and get the show ended. And yes, Humberto, Ron, the show must go on. Like, you want to keep going, Ron? You want to? I'll leave, and you just lead the show for the next 2 hours.
No, I think people have heard enough of me.
Yeah. Nah, man, this has been awesome. So my final thoughts before we bring this show to a close. I have been trying to be the one to remain positive about this whole thing. And this is real quick to point out about the whole Tannehill thing. I understand the whole knee issue that we're worried about, but but a lot of people have said, and a lot of doctors have also said, that given enough time to heal and enough time to rehab, and it's properly done, essentially the ACL can come back stronger than it did before it got repaired. Now, we know that he wound up trying to heal it naturally first, and they didn't get the surgery, and then he had to get it anyway. And look, the surgery wasn't necessary. The problem was that Tannehill did not have enough time to let it heal naturally. It can be done. It's just that as an athlete, you don't have the luxury of waiting that long for it to heal. You need to hurry up and heal it. So that's why they get surgery. And if he rehabs correctly, which I believe he did, I highly doubt Ryan Tannehill spent any time just sitting on his duff during the offseason. There's no way. So if he did it right, then I'd say his knee's going to come back stronger than before, and I think he's going to be okay on that front. I understand the whole scar tissue thing. I do. But there's a reason. I don't think doctors would go ahead and lie and say that your knee is going to be stronger than before to give you that false sense of security, and then you kind of just show up again. I don't think that team doctors would play around with their athletes like that, especially when they're going to get paid a lot of cash to be the team doctors. So I don't think they get paid by the injury. So that being said, I think this team is going to surprise some people. And I think it's going to be a shocker, more of a shocker than it was in 2016, because on paper, it doesn't look as strong. On paper, it looks like the Dolphins lost a lot of talent and replaced it with people who are subpar. Mike Pouncey went to 3 Pro Bowls. He was replaced with Dan Kilgore. Dan Kilgore has not gone to any Pro Bowls as far as I know, so he's just an average center, which honestly, that's what Pouncey had pretty much deteriorated into. So he deteriorated into an average center. So the Pro Bowls are gone. And Ndamukong Suh is gone. I'm not even going to try and pretend that we can replace that easily unless, like Duke says, we go and get Vita Vea at 11, which I guess wouldn't be the worst thing in the world as long as we get a stud defensive player. So that on that front, that's correct. But the way the offense is being built, the way it is being fit together, I think that between Kenny Stills and Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant and Devontae Parker and Danny Amendola, you have at least 5 weapons right there who at any given moment can be a matchup nightmare for a team. And if you put them all on the field together, it becomes a matter of who are you going to cover. You only have so many guys on the field that you can dedicate to rushing the passer, which means that you're going to have at least one guy open at some point, or you're going to wind up having it so that nobody is open, and maybe Tannehill can just take off and run, because I still think he can do that, and he can get like 5 or 6 yards, and then you're just going to have to try again. No matter what, there's going to be, the way the offense is being built right now, there's going to be somebody open, and that I think is why I think is going to be successful. This team is trying to build off of the New England model in pretty much every sense of the word, and if it works, I think you're going to see the Dolphins climbing back up to at least 10-6. I think that's going to happen. So that's my final thought. Thank you all so much for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again next week. I'm hoping that, I don't know if it's going to be as good as this week, but let's try to aim for that, shall we? Let's not make this the ceiling. Let's make this the new floor for PhinManiacs Live. So for myself, Chad Ronenbaum, Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke, Ron Caniff, and Ian Berger, and all of you who called in on this show, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next week for another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. Good night.